Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddler Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today we are on to New Horizons, man. We're going beyond New Horizons, actually, and we're definitely going to blunder it. So before we move any further into Beyond the Blunderdome, let me introduce to you your co-host with the most, back again for another season of The Simpsons. Welcome back. It's Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
Happy holidays, everybody. Man, we both sound a little rough under the skin today. I don't know if the job's starting to get to me or what right now, but let's try that. I know what I need. I need some cool, crisp Diet Coke, in case you want to sponsor us, Diet Coke or Coca-Cola in general.
Here I'm sure go. They're tuned in. I'm so nope, no one named Diet Coke is here yet. Oh well, good efforts.
All right, we'll keep that going. But yeah, new season, start of something fancy maybe, and maybe this episode's got some funny things that have not aged well. I think so. We got a lot to talk about today, I think. So let me go ahead and throw it back to you. The man, the myth. I forgot what the last part was because I haven't read my notes in like 20 minutes. The man, the myth, the what kind of mint? He is Miles.
Yeah, we talked on the finale spectacular from season 10 that there's a lot of things that were kind of dated in certain ways, and this one's mostly dated in like a different sort of way. And I think that a large part of that may have to do with the fact that it's a celebrity cameo episode where that celebrity cameo's like public perception has changed significantly since this episode aired.
Well, then there's another public celebrity that they take jabs at like very hard and very quick, who's like, it's almost like they flipped with Mel Gibson since then, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to talk about as we go through that. I'm sure that we'll want to, stop and sidetrack as we normally do for that. So I guess let's go ahead and dive right into the script. We are talking about the first episode of season 11 today, Beyond Blunderdome, which originally aired on September 26, 1999. The chalkboard gag on this one is Fridays are not pants optional, which I think is a little bit of a dated joke in itself in this point, because in 2020, every day is pants optional. I'm not wearing pants right now. Like, yeah, there's no need for pants.
Full time with my pants.
Stupid. That'll learn you. Also dated, we get the couched gag, which shows the Simpsons literally running in to see the dated versions of themselves, the very crude animations featured on the Tracy Ullman show back in the very late 80s. And we open up as the city it's actually a word from our sponsors on something that the Simpsons are watching, I'm sure. But you actually see the camera like panning through a city where it's like a thick fog is taking over. There's kids coughing wait a second. Is this the Simpsons predicting the pandemic?
Maybe.
Is this the kind of air we want to leave for our children?
I mean, we kind of already did, but yes. I mean, no.
But it actually turns out that this is an electric car commercial. We see a car driving through, like piercing through the smog, leaving clean air and blue skies. Kids are all happy and grateful, and they run up to the car, and Homer's not impressed at all until he hears in the ad that there is a free gift if you just go and test drive, which he is all about that free gift. And when he mentions to his children that they're going to go test drive an electric car, at first Lisa is like quite proud of her father. She even says, "I'm proud of you, Dad. Buying an electric car will help clean the air and protect the Earth's supply of..." You're faking this to get the gift, aren't you?
But I like the nice things you said about me.
We see the Simpsons family walk up to a saleswoman at an auto lot. I believe it is for the Electoris. Thinking of saying goodbye to gas?
You betcha.
Nice, dude. Way to be ready in the moment. And Marge actually gets mad at Bart here. She's like, Bart! But for the very first time and only time in Simpsons history, we actually see Marge Simpson fart on camera. And immediately she's like, well, that shut me up.
I know you didn't talk about it, man. What's up with the director's commentary on this one? They got anything to say about Marge farting?
You know, they didn't mention Marge farting at all on this one, but I'm glad you brought it up because they did talk about something else with the electric car. So first of all, the commentary on this one featured Mike Scully, George Meyer, Ian Maxtone Graham, Ron Hauge, Matt Selman, and Steve Moore. They talked about how the electric car on this one was actually inspired, or the idea to do this joke was inspired by the fact that Kevin Nealon was actually a friend of David Merkin, who is still working on the show like one day a week or so at this time. And Kevin Nealon and David were friends, and Kevin Nealon actually came to visit David on the set, and he had just bought an electric car. So he was kind of showing it off, and all the Simpsons were kind of laughing at the idea and decided to write it into the sketch. But of course, their bit was instead of if Kevin Nealon had an electric car, what would it be like if Homer had an electric car? And of course, he decides that electric must mean that it's waterproof.
For some reason.
Don't worry, it's electric, which if anything, like that would make it worse. Like anything that's electric should automatically not be put in the water.
In the water, yeah.
Yeah. But Homer, again, he's doing this all because he wants this free gift anyway, which we don't even really know what that is at this point. But the salespeople are way too willing to just hand this car over to the Simpsons. Like, they don't go with them. They're just like, here's the keys, have fun. And again, Homer almost, I mean, within moments, he drives off the end of a pier. And we see him, he's like, everything's fine, like, don't worry.
Marge is like, boy, that quiet engine sure makes conversation a lot easier. And Homer goes, yeah, it's got a lot of other problems too.
Very reminiscent of the line we'll get later where he talks about the only thing that'll like save him from like the drudgery of his job and family. Kind of foreshadowing that just a little bit. But yeah, after noticing the problems, he just decides to drive off the end of a pier into the ocean. He's like, everything's fine. See, dolphins. But then when the dolphins swim by, they actually get zapped by the electric car. Oopsie.
And then like scuba divers and mermaids are there too.
It almost looks like a really generic underwater video game level. Like if you were like fighting bad guys, this would be like the progression you would see.
But they just all keep getting zapped.
But to the car's credit and Homer's credit, the car just keeps on driving. He drives it straight out of the water, straight onto the land, and he even like pats it saying, salt water seemed to be good for it.
And then it blows up.
And smoke goes everywhere. And we immediately cut to the salesperson's office where we can hear Homer saying, sorry, but this car did not meet my eco concerns. Can I have my prize now?
Certainly.
And Homer takes the envelope, but when he walks away, it reveals that the car is in like really bad condition.
Yeah. Like the car was right behind Homer and you couldn't see it until he got out of the way.
Right.
It's gone.
And even the car is pleading for, it's like, help, it burns.
Which, when you go to a car dealership to test drive a car, they make sure that you have insurance and make sure they have your information. So like,
they like keep your ID or something, I'm sure.
Outside of Springfield, they would hunt you down if you returned a car looking like that and charge you for it.
Indeed, I agree.
We get a really cool crisp Diet Coke.
We get a really funny joke here, and on the commentary, not David Merkin, that was a former showrunner, Mike Scully, actually talks about how much he loves this style of joke, where it essentially kind of pokes fun at sitcom television itself. And in this case, we cut to Marge and Homer, who are in bed, but still have that envelope that they received from the car dealership earlier. And Marge is like, hey, we never opened that envelope to see what our gift is.
We didn't. That's odd. Seems like we would have done that right after we left the car place.
I know, but we didn't.
Well, here it is. We can open it and find out now.
Perfect. It's so reminiscent of, I mean, like in real life, you would have opened that envelope in the car as soon as you got like out of sight of like responsibility for the mess you made.
I'm glad that they touched on that because I did feel like that was just a convenient like cut, but like it makes sense that they're poking fun at programming stuff on TV shows.
For sure. And again, Mike Scully, being somebody who writes for television, gets to really take some nice insider jabs at the process.
Yeah.
We open up the envelope to reveal that it's actually 2 movie tickets, but Homer's immediately disappointed. He's like, "Oh, movie tickets? That hardly seems worth destroying a car."
They're passes to a test screening of a new movie starring Mel Gibson.
And Marge is clearly impressed, but Homer is the opposite. He's just like, who else is in it?
Who cares? Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson is just a guy, Marge. No different than me or Lenny.
Were you or Lenny ever named sexiest man alive?
I'm not certain about Lenny.
Besides, it's not just his chiseled good looks. People magazine say he's a devoted father, goes to church every week, and likes to fix things around the Homer, let's make love.
And Homer's taken off guard by this. He's like, okay, but Marge just flicks the lights off and goes to town, and Homer starts to get suspicious. You're thinking about me, right?
Of course, homie. Aren't you thinking about me?
Oh, I will now.
It was a great little twist on the joke there.
It was fun, yeah. This should, I guess, be a good time to talk about Mel Gibson being a part of this show in general. Mel Gibson is the guest star in this episode, and we're going to meet him here shortly. But the way that he got to be involved with this process was actually kind of interesting. So Mel Gibson actually hosted some sort of charity event that Mike Scully was actually attending. And long story short, Mel Gibson needed some like punch up jokes written for the event. And since Mike Scully was there, he like, okay, I can do it. And he actually wrote jokes for him there on the spot. And then while they were chatting, Mel Gibson revealed that he was a big fan of The Simpsons, and they kind of exchanged information. And then from there, it was just a matter of scheduling, because like they were like, yeah, I'd love to have you on the show. And they came in, did his lines, and was, again, in typical Simpsons guest fashion, especially the ones that are a fan and like excited to be there. He was an ideal guest. He came in and he did, all of his lines. He was like really fun with everybody. He engaged with a lot of people. And they also talked about, how it seemed very interesting that the day that Mel Gibson was scheduled to be on set, for whatever reason, all of the female employees, the writers, the cartoonists, the animators, the directors, everybody that would be somebody that, I don't know, might have a crush on Mel Gibson, they all came in looking extra dressed up that day. They were wearing fancier clothing, jewelry, and makeup than you might normally see them typically putting on for the writer's room. And even Nancy Cartwright herself wrote about it in her book, My Life as a 10-Year-Old Boy, where she reminisces about the day that Mel Gibson came in and how there was just like a buzz, like this, because he was such a heartthrob at the time. Because again, this was 1999 Mel Gibson. This was pre-anti-Semitic, like domestic dispute or possibly abuse. I'm not sure what the outcome of that was, but definitely coked out rage DUI Mel Gibson came in 2006. And that's the version we saw on South Park.
Yeah. And like at this point, he was still very much the guy, which again just kind of makes rewatching this episode very, very different. But there is one thing that's very clear while you watch this episode, is that it seems like he's having a lot of fun, which, I mean, you got to credit that to everybody at the show, because like you said, that just seems to be pretty much the normal when the guest stars come on.
Yeah,
I remember this being a big deal when it came on, like the first time too. It was like, oh, Mel Gibson's on. Wow.
I would say, trying to think off the top of my head, this was the biggest star they've ever had, like when he was in the prime of how big of a deal he was.
Yeah.
But I love all the stuff with like, basically because Mike Scully was able to like offer some help with his jokes, that just like steamrolled this connection that allowed him to end up on the show. And again, just really cool that it was such like you even pointed out, you can tell he's having a really good time, and I love that about this show.
Mm-hmm. And I love too that it's just shows you again that it's just about connections. Like it's you get people from The Simpsons to come on the show from Twitter and just like these basic things, and it just shows you that like it's not like all this stuff is scheduled way in advance, and because they're The Simpsons, they do this, this, and this. But it's still Mike Scully. Oh, I'm having a Mike Pence moment.
Did a fly land on your head?
Yeah, I've had a fly recording, and now it's really bothering me. But just the fact that Mike Scully can just be doing this offhand thing real quick and this just quick little jab writing and then get like a major movie star to come on the show, like it just shows you got to take opportunity when it's presented from you and go
when it
with
knocks, you got to answer, man. Yeah, 100%. That's crazy. And we do see the Simpsons take advantage of their opportunity to go to this test screening where they see a line wrapped around the marquee. It says, I want to say it says no internet spies, and they're actually kicking comic book guy out. And he's like, how did you know? And they start throwing his like computer parts, and not like a laptop, but like a full-size desktop computer, complete with the mouse that he has to yell back. Hey, I had a mouse. Smack.
That's the late 90s way to get internet spies around. You can never see them, though, carrying all their computer equipment.
Yeah, revealing all the, insider good. I mean, like reviewing the movie essentially is what's going to happen. But you don't want spoilers. I understand. Especially in that era when like the internet wasn't as prevalent. So now everybody just expects the movie to be spoiled, and it's, done and over with. We see an executive introduce the evening. He says that he's the assistant VP of finance and distribution at Polystar Pictures, which gets a huge response. And Ned is like, oh, I should have brought a camera.
Conveniently, his name is Christian too, which kind of leans into that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. But this executive also points out that he's not alone. There's also the dynamic duo of William Milo and Robin Hanna, who greenlit all of Shaquille O'Neal movies, including Kazam, which got kind of like mixed reviews.
How's the popcorn, guys?
Needs salt.
Terrible.
It's just really corny jokes, but the guy goes on to explain that they're here to test screen Mel Gibson's new film, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. He explains that after the film, the audience is going to actually get to write down their opinion and send it to the filmmakers themselves so they will be able to directly influence this film. But Marge just wants to know what all the ladies are wondering. Is Mel Gibson here?
No, sorry, but like all celebrities, he's in Hollywood attending benefits for various diseases.
But that turns out to not be true, because after we see the end of the film, we see Mel Gibson himself has actually snuck into the theater.
Before the filming, or before they started showing the movie,
he like sneaks in to watch it. You're right, yeah. But he's like, did they like it?
Oh, they haven't seen it yet, Mel.
And how'd you get here from LA so fast?
John Travolta flew me in his jet. Now I have to help him move next weekend. Deliberately waited until we were in the air to ask me.
I love how that's a really funny joke, just because like the idea of celebrities having to like move themselves and whatnot and doing that thing that like other people like have probably done in the past, or you're like, damn it, I really wouldn't have said no to this, but you asked me when you're in the middle of doing me a favor.
Yeah.
Can I just go back to you not helping me with mine and I won't help you with yours? Is it too late for that option?
Agreed.
But they point out that everything's going to be fine. He really doesn't need to be here. But Mel Gibson has just this feeling. He said he didn't know, and he thinks the movie might be a big mistake. And he's mostly worried because all he does is talk for 2 hours, and he doesn't shoot anyone. Ugh, what was I thinking?
You shouldn't worry about this movie. William and I both think you're fabulous.
And I think we know a little something about the movie business. Oh, Robin, you got to see the director's cut of Booty Call. It's fabulous.
What? Even better than the original? Because that was pretty fabulous, too.
Okay, for what it's worth, I actually thoroughly enjoyed the movie Booty Call when I saw it when I was like 11. So, whatever.
Well, I want to point out that when they started the screening, the movie producer said that this was Mel Gibson's directorial follow-up to Braveheart. So he's
Yeah.
remaking Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So
And
that's a big deal.
actually, apparently, the idea for the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington parody was thought up by Tom Gamble, who we've had his son Henry Gamble on the show, who he currently works for F is for Family.
Awesome.
I just thought that was kind of fun. Yeah, right? Boring.
It's not boring. He's passionate about government.
At least the Jimmy Stewart version had the giant rabbit who ran the savings and loan. But yeah, Homer's the only one that seems to really not be liking this film. Even Mayor Quimby is into it. He really likes Mel Gibson's filibustering abilities. But Homer's like completely turned off. He calls it a stinker. Marge defends it, but Homer's just like, you're just saying that because your boyfriend was in it. I'll bet that you would have hated it if me or Lenny was Mr. Smith.
Will you stop acting so jealous?
We see Mel Gibson actually tries to like sneak out into the back alley to answer or to take a pee behind a dumpster. But that actually triggers the fire alarm when he opens the door, and it ends up having a crowd rush past him, which on the director's commentary, they talked about there was actually somebody that they knew that actually would like famously do this at events. It may have been Mel Gibson himself. I wasn't able to hear because they were laughing so hard over it. But somebody basically, either Mel Gibson or somebody else that they knew, would never actually go to like the men's room at these public events because they said it was like just like the worst place to get cornered by like paparazzi and things like that. So they would literally like they'd be at these like gala events and they would sneak out in the back and pee behind a dumpster.
I can understand that thought process, I guess.
Seems totally smart to me.
It seems essentially like you're peeing in the same spot. I mean, for those who haven't been in a men's room in a public place, it's not fun.
True. Though at these like fancy events, I would imagine slightly different. I just think it's funny though that like the risk of like potentially getting snagged by said paparazzi peeing behind a dumpster seems pretty high too, though. I don't know.
Especially once the story starts spreading. But I love how Mel steals a line from another character here when everybody rushes to see him.
Yeah, we actually see everybody kind of like slams as he's peeing behind this dumpster, and he's like, "Hi, everybody."
He's not peeing behind the dumpster. He doesn't make it outside. Let's be clear about that.
He's on his way to pee behind the dumpster.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Mr. Gibson.
And it's Dr. Nick answering. But he basically thanks everybody for coming, and he's like, please be truthful when you fill out those cards. Honesty is the foundation of the movie business.
We'll be honest. We could never lie to you, Mel.
Marge actually asks if he'll be reading the cards himself.
Well, I'll be reading yours personally.
And he gives her the kiss on the hand. Marge literally almost like passes out from this, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
But
Homer also almost passes out from rage.
This just triggers Homer all the way. He's already kind of pissed off and he hated the movie, but seeing Mel Gibson put the moves on his lady sends him over the edge. He's like, that's it. I'm telling Mr. Stupidest Man Alive what I really thought of his movie. Hey, Gibson.
Yes, sir.
You got a pencil?
Here you go.
And instead of telling to his face, Homer goes back and starts writing down on his card, thanks, waste my time in front of a stupid, appreciate it. And he hands the pencil back and he's just so calm. Appreciate it.
And then gives the producer his card.
Mm-hmm. He stuffs it in the producer's like chest pocket too. But on the way home, we see they're on the flight, Mel Gibson and all the producers of the film. They're all going through all these comic cards. Everybody loved it. He's like, everything's great. His producer's like, don't worry, it's gonna be fine. But he's like, meh. Mel Gibson specifically is like, maybe. But when they
feels like everybody's just patting him on the back because he's Mel Gibson. Like he feels like no one's being truthful to him.
And he feels like Homer Simpson might be the only person with the guts to tell him the truth.
Your movie is more boring than church. All you did was yak, yak, yak. You didn't even shoot anybody. Damn, I knew it.
I love the realization of like, I knew I should have shot somebody.
You said that in the previous scene. I don't even shoot anybody.
But Mel Gibson goes up to the cockpit where he sees John Travolta himself is actually flying this plane, and he's like, "Hey, fly us to 742 Evergreen Terrace."
Hey, we got to be back in a certain time, or some other random line Travolta would say.
But he's like, "Yeah, I have to do it." It's like playing on the favor bit because they already like he did help me move. And that actually brings us to the end of our first act. We open up Act 2 at the Simpsons' home, where we see the plane actually passes overhead so close that it like shakes Maggie around. And then immediately the doorbell rings. So like the like way this like landing happened does not make any sense, but it's still very funny. Marge is very, very surprised when she opens the door to see Mel Gibson there looking for her husband. And Homer's like, "Yeah, and I've been looking for you too, pal."
Pound him, Dad.
Bart, don't.
Quiet. Dad's going to get his butt kicked by Mel Gibson. Knock his teeth out, Homer.
Listen, Gibson, I'm tired of Hollywood pretty boys like you and Jack Valent thinking you can have any woman you want. You see this? And he holds up like Marge's hand to actually like show off the wedding ring. It symbolizes that she's my property and I own her.
Whoa. Mr. Simpson, I need your help.
Duh.
I think you're right about my movie, and I want you to help me make it better.
Really? You want me to help? Marge, did you hear that? Mel Gibson wants my help. Mel Gibson.
Dad, I thought you hated.
Shut up.
Homer doesn't know anything about making movies.
And this is where Mel Gibson like explains that he might be the only one who has the brutal honesty necessary to be completely tactless and insensitive.
Guilty as charged. I like too that Gibson said, "Don't sell your husband short, Mrs. Simpson." And Homer goes, "She's always doing that."
And it like so he's like, "She's always doing that, Mel." Like they're already like first name best friends. Yeah. Excuse me. But very much like you said, like Mel Gibson, or like you talked about earlier, Mel Gibson has too many yes men around, and he wants somebody that'll actually give him like real life criticism, like feedback. He says, "The problem is I have people love me so much they never criticize me. I speed all the time, but the cops never give me a ticket. Whoops. If I don't pay my taxes, the IRS pays them for me."
Oh, you poor thing.
It's hell being Mel.
Honk, honk. Come on, G.
I love the line too where I speed and cops don't give me a ticket, because again in 2006 he actually got pulled over for DUI. Was how all of his fall from grace essentially started. But what's that?
I said, but Travolta's honking the plane horn saying it's time to go.
So Mel Gibson invites Homer to go to Hollywood with him, and Homer's like, "You had me at hello."
I didn't say hello.
But the whole family is going to LA. They hop on a plane. Hollywood, here we are. And actually, it's like Marge is like, "Hollywood, here we come," and then they land. Hollywood, here we are.
Stop doing that, Mom.
Mel Gibson personally drives the Simpsons to the studio. Homer is actually really impressed with he's driving a Dodge Caravan, the Cadillac of minivans. Marge looks outside and is like, "Oh, look, they're making a movie. Robert Downey Jr. is shooting it out with the police."
I don't see any cameras.
And there is the other flip of like going from like having already fallen from grace to revitalizing his career in 2007 when Iron Man comes out.
So that's odd that it was like around the same time where they have the switch too.
It really is. Yeah. 99, Mel Gibson's on top of the world and Robert Downey Jr. is like in a gutter somewhere.
Bottom. Yeah.
And then in 2006, Mel Gibson starts to fall. And in 2007, Robert Downey Jr. becomes Iron Man. And I hear that goes pretty well for him.
We'll see.
The rest of the franchise. So Mel has Homer on set to try to like improve things. And Homer's ideas are immediately questionable, I think you could say, because like it includes things like upping the humor quotient by running several scenes in fast motion, because everybody
he's right about that for what it's worth.
Adding a musical montage where Gibson wears funny hats, so you can see Mel's playful side. And also, what's that?
Doesn't he do that in What Women Want?
Probably. Honestly, I haven't seen that movie in a really long time. That is a good movie, though. They on at a lot of Mel Gibson like tropes and things that have happened in his career. And actually, since you brought up the What Women Want, I'll go ahead and say that like the way that this production goes, where Mel is kind of taking it out of the director's hand at this point, actually did happen on the movie Payback. Which is was it Ransom? Maybe I think it was Ransom. Another Mel Gibson film that he did. He basically took it out of the director's hands and like started making all these changes, and it ended up his version and the director's version ended up being released separately.
Wow, I never knew that. Makes sense though.
Yeah. It's funny to me. Sometimes, like when you watch a director's cut versus a non-director's cut, like I would struggle to identify the difference. But then there's other movies where it's like, oh my God, that's not even the same film. Like, completely different.
Is this where Homer also makes the best suggestion of all about the changing the villain to the dog with shifty eyes?
That's how you know he's a bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, but he's absolutely right. I mean, come on, Mel. He's a visionary.
We get a quick aside where we see Marge and the kids are doing like a guided tour of Hollywood where they see the famous Brown Derby restaurant that only Marge seems to be impressed by. And now it's just a vacant lot with people like homeless people, essentially, because that's the site where it used to be. And on your left is the notorious spot where Hugh Grant filmed the movie 9 months.
Ew. So there's not really a B plot in this one. I just realized.
Barely, if any.
Mm-hmm. And I forgot to point out earlier when Mel Gibson was talking to everyone in Springfield, we're up to Space Mutants 12 on the poster behind him and McBain 6. I meant to bring that up earlier, so that's my bad.
Yeah, that's important for sure, and we'll see more of McBain later. So Mel Gibson is starting to realize that maybe he made a mistake, and he actually is like, you know what? Let me just pay for your bus fare home.
Now here's your biggest problem of all.
The filibuster scene? That was Jimmy Stewart's favorite.
And it was fine for the 1930s. The country was doing great back then. Everyone was into talking. But now, in whatever year this is, the audience wants action. And seats with beverage holders, but mainly action.
He's not wrong again, man. I love a good beverage holder and a good action sequence.
I like the fact that it says in whatever year this is because it's still relevant to me.
Yes, 100%. And his misconceptions about how life was in the 1930s.
Yeah. Everybody was great in the Great Depression. He
goes on to explain that it's like the most boring piece of garbage that he's ever seen, and it's not easy for me to say that, Mel.
I guess it is a little flat. Okay, let's reshoot the ending. I'll call the hair and makeup ladies, and you see if the Teamsters will work for free.
Piece of cake. Now, where's that kid with my latte? We cut back to the other rest of the family doing a walking tour now. They see the dog from Frasier, which is across the street from where Ellen DeGeneres and Anne Heche live. Which that's like barely a joke at all. Even like by today's standard, it's not. But even on the commentary, they point out that it was dated, but mostly because at this point, Ellen and Anne they separated. And I believe Anne Heche went on to marry a man, and Ellen DeGeneres went on to marry Portia de Rossi.
I remember those days.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, it was a big deal back then. I mean, it was a different time, man. What a time to be alive. You'd get yourself a moon pie and then strap an onion to your belt and then watch lesbians on the big screen. It was a fascinating thing.
Well, we talked about in our finale spectacular if we thought they would take like underhanded jokes in the upcoming seasons. and I don't think this is nowhere near like the
This one doesn't feel in any way hateful or punching
Yeah.
down in any way. They're just literally pointing out like they're a lesbian couple.
But it's kind of pointless by today's standards, though.
100%. Yeah. But this one doesn't give me like an icky feeling like the like transphobic jokes that we discussed a few episodes back. Like there was a few jokes there where you and I kind of talked about. It's like, hey, yeah, okay, I'll say it because it's in the script as it was written and we need to talk about it. But like I feel uncomfortable, like would not want to be overheard saying this, like, I don't know, on a podcast somewhere.
To be fair, Miles is Ron Burgundy, so if I type a script out for him, he's going to read whatever I type.
Is that true?
We'll have to find out.
Quit typing question marks.
I'm Ron Burgundy?
Yeah. All right, so we see that the new sequence is significantly different than the previous one. He's, instead of like doing a filibuster, this time he's actually fighting. It's full on violence. He's slamming people in desks. He's throwing an American flag like a javelin, which actually like stabs somebody into a desk.
Goes all the way through, and the flag still pops back.
Yeah, it still waves.
I mean, I would be shocked if I didn't see that in the movie.
I move we impose some serious term limits.
And then start smacking people's heads and desks.
And we see Homer somehow wrote himself into the film. He's like, I second that motion. And he pulls a rifle out with a vengeance. We just talked about Die Hard. How perfect is that? He tosses the rifle to Mel Gibson, who jumps up on the table and says, all in favor, say die.
But then he does that little like
he's like running around the screen, like around the edges, like yeah, very much like Homer does on the floor. Was it the episode The Cartridge Family where he did that by chance? Now I can't remember, but that seems right.
When Homer was like on the floor spinning around in circles?
Yeah, running around.
No, we can do some research on that here in a second. But it was
the only reason I was maybe thinking that would be possibly is because Mike Scully actually, this was actually the first script that Mike Scully actually ever officially wrote as showrunner. And he remembers distinctly really wanting to do The Cartridge Family, but deciding that he really wouldn't have time to get that one done as well. And also Schwartzwelder had already started working on it. So, kind of dibs. But he ended up doing this one instead of The Cartridge Family. And I just thought that would have been really interesting if the thing was in both. Anyway, moving on.
It would be interesting, but I think that's a big stretch there, I think.
Yeah, but sure. Probably not important. I'm going to find out in like 3 episodes in the commentary that was like the biggest moment. And so that tells the secrets of The Simpsons. It both lists like where they are, who shot Mr. Burns, and how they know everything about the future or the past or the future, how they predict the future. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. No, I'm broken. Let's move on to Mel Gibson continuing to break all of these politicians by cutting off heads, shooting people. He says, "Happy birthday, Mr. President," as he like cuts his head off, I think. And we see, for some reason, school children burst in and start cheering and carrying Mel Gibson off on their shoulders.
Well, he takes the like presidential seal off the stand over there and like frisbees it at the president and decapitates it.
And we see as his hand clutches onto the badge, I think it is, it changes from president to the end.
Yep, it's U.S. Senator, and then they close their hand on it when it opens back up. The end.
Yeah. Lights come on. All the executives sat there quiet. Mel Gibson's like, pretty cool, huh?
It's, according to Google, the last exit to Springfield is that episode, just for what it's worth.
Oh, okay. Right on.
I don't know if that's correct. Sorry, I just wanted to answer your question.
You're good. But yeah, so they're basically like disgusted. You chopped off the president's head.
But you didn't see that coming.
You impaled a United States senator with the American flag.
Why did Mr. Smith kill everybody?
It was symbolism. He was mad.
This is going to be the studio's prestige picture, like Howard's End or Sophie's Choice.
And Homer's like, those movies sucked. I only saw them to get Marge in the sack. P.S. Mission accomplished. And he gives Mel Gibson a high five.
Like Gibson high fives him back too, where it's like you actually feel like you're like actually kind of close at this moment. It's like I don't know.
They find their final protest is that they've already bought 5 Golden Globe Awards, but he goes on to explain, I don't make movies to win awards, as he holds up Oscars, especially now that I have 2 Oscars. I make movies for guys like him.
Yeah, guys like me.
Who are you anyway?
Do the words executive producer mean anything to you?
And that throws Mel Gibson off guard. He's like, executive producer?
I'll talk.
They go on to explain that they desecrated a classic film. It's worse than The Godfather 3.
Whoa, hey, whoa. Let's not say things we can't take back.
I'm right. All right. I'm sorry. But this film is never going to see the light of day. And he actually like sets it aflame with a lighter.
Well, he acts like he's going to set it aflame with a lighter.
Yeah. But they grab it. They see that they're actually towing away a Range Rover. And they do a classic yoink. Come on, Homer. We've got a movie to premiere.
Well, it's Gibson. He goes to the window and he's just trying to think of something. And he goes, look, they're towing away a Range Rover because that's the style at the time. Everybody was driving Range
That would be
Rovers.
very distracting. Yeah.
So they all think it's their car because they all drive Range Rovers. They're Hollywood people.
And then they do this kind of bit with these Hollywood people where they're like, we've got to get that film back or we're all going to get fired. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Huh?
Fired.
And the executives take off running.
And that's the end of that chapter.
And that brings us to the end of our second act. We see our third act open up as a chase in the new McBain film, Saving Irene, Ryan.
I love this bit. You put me down, you big lummox. Jed!
Shut up, old lady, and stop kicking me there.
So, like, he's fireman carrying her.
Yeah.
And she's really kicking him down
She's
under
giving
while
him a
he's running.
beating, yeah.
Like, it's something where you wouldn't have ever thought of it until he said the line. And when he said the line, it's just so stupid and funny.
And it's going on during like this ridiculous over the top like car chase specifically at this point. They're like trying to get away from these Hollywood executives. I'm trying to look at like a good spot to get back into the story on this. Basically they're fighting over the script and finally they're like Mel Gibson's ready to give up. He's like, forget it, Homer. Let's just give him this stupid movie.
That's after they're on the Ryan set. And Mel Gibson's like, Homer, landmine. And he goes, on it. And he drives into the landmine.
He like does it intentionally, yeah.
Which really has like landmine abilities, except for the burning your skin off part, because it launches their golf cart into the air.
But Homer's ready to like give up. I'm sorry, Mel Gibson's ready to give up, but Homer is not. He even gives this like impassioned speech with like a musical cue and everything. Movies aren't stupid. They fill us with romance and hatred and revenge fantasies. Lethal Weapon showed us that suicide is funny.
I think you missed a point there, Homer. It wasn't my intention.
Before Lethal Weapon 2, I didn't know there could be a bomb in my toilet, but now I check every time.
And at this point, they're in the like Hollywood auto museum where it's cars from famous movies.
They're right by all the famous cars, including one from Thunderdome.
And the Simpsons family is all in there. So when Homer says that he checks the toilet every time, Marge is like, it's true, he does.
Yeah.
Who doesn't after watching that movie? Come on.
And when Mel Gibson asked, do movies really mean that much to you, Homer?
They're my only escape from the drudgery of work and family.
And he looks over at his family. Yeah, no offense. Oh, what the heck? Let's hit the Let's hit the road. Shove over, Junior, which is a line from Mad Max as he pushes away a dummy version of himself from Mad Max out of the Mad Max car.
Yeah, from the second one, I believe.
And we cut over to the Batmobile where Batman's sitting next to Robin. That thoughtless destruction will surely bankrupt the museum, old chum.
Shut up.
We get into an even more crazy chase at this point because now they have the Mad Max car.
Which drives for some reason.
Yeah, it's not just a model, but it actually works. They actually try to take it and leap the car, but he bounces off of the executive's vehicle and lands safely. But immediately the executives are trying to like come up with like an alibi. He's like, "You all saw it. They needed an excuse for the body that was run over."
Whoa. We got to talk about this point. Nobody landed safely in this. First of all, Gibson says, "I've got an idea. Lisa, take the wheel." And she goes, "But my dad's right there." He goes, "Lisa, you take the wheel." And then somebody dressed in Mel Gibson's clothes launches at the car and bounces off the car and starts getting run over like left and right. So it looks like they just killed Mel Gibson.
It's because of that they had the dummy version of him in the back of the car still.
Mm-hmm. For any of you who haven't seen this episode from 1999, I just wanted to paint a clear picture there. Mel Gibson switched clothes with the dummy for some reason. I guess to make him think it was him, but
so now they're having second thoughts about the plan. Gibson's trying to get him to explain, and Homer's like, "But this was your plan from Braveheart. Your army mooned the enemy until they could take no more and surrendered." And they're actually like mooning the executives as they drive up.
Well, I like when the executives are pulling up, they're like, "Who the heck is that?" And Hannah says, "Well, the one on the left is Mel Gibson. I don't know who the other two guys are." And it's just Homer. And that's when Gibson asks for the rest of the plan. And Gibson says, "No, they didn't. They attacked us in a horribly bloody battle, remember?"
So we finally end up in this big like wreck out in front, or the movie gets premiered. They make it. They manage to get themselves to the theater. What's that?
After the car gets stuck in Homer's ass.
But the screening does not go well. It turns out that Homer really was really the only person that liked his version of the film. Everybody else reacted very negatively, and even
but they didn't have the shifty eye dog in it. If they
that's a big problem. And even Jimmy Stewart's granddaughter was like, "Homer, we're going to sue you for this like debacle, travesty."
I'm sorry I ruined your career, Mel.
It's not your fault, Homer. I guess there's no today's crazy, gentle America for violent dinosaurs like us.
How did the country lose its way, Mel? When did we stop rooting for the man with a flamethrower or an acid spraying gun of some kind?
I blame the internet and the return of swing.
Oh yeah, that did come back in the 90s.
Zoot suit riot.
Well, whatever it is, we got to get rolling on our next picture. Hey, what about a prequel of something? Everybody loves prequels.
And Mel Gibson's like, "I don't."
Nobody loves prequels. That's what's so funny about it. Okay, Mr. Difficult, how about a team sex romp where you and your buddies are always trying to get some? No, wait, a ghost who wins the lottery.
They slide into a limousine as Homer continues to pitch ideas.
You can be the ghost or the lottery commissioner. Ooh, what about Indiana Jones? Does anyone own the rights to that?
And after that one, we see the limo stop, the door opens, and Homer's tossed onto the street.
Hey, Mel, I fell out.
And we see the camera now pans back to the theater where there's a single dog sitting there with evil, shifting eyes. And we zoom in on him as we get the impression that it was the dog all along. And the screen fades to black where we hear a ominous howl. And that is the end of our third act and the end of Beyond Blunderdome.
All right. That was a little difficult there around the edges, but we got through it.
Richie, is there anything else that you or that book of yours want to talk about before we call it a day on this one?
I know there's a lot of trivia on this one, so I'm going to leave most of that to you, but the one that I thought was just really kind of cool was that in the French-Canadian version, an actor named Hubert Gagnon provides the voice for Homer, and he also does Mel Gibson's voice in most of the French Canadian dubs for his movies. So I thought that was really cool that like both of his characters were basically on screen at the same time. But besides that, there's a point where Homer's telling Bart, according to IMDb, that he can't stay and help with the movie, and he's got his hand around his shoulder with his fingers over Bart's shoulder. And when Homer turns to leave, his hand moves, but the fingers are still on Bart's shoulder. So very interesting that they missed that animation part, or that it was like, I assume, too difficult to reanimate a clean shirt Bart there for some reason.
Interesting.
But other than that, the last thing I want to say is, because it wasn't in the script, but it was a very important moment in the episode to me, is whenever they're screening the remade movie for the executives before they try to steal it, and the numbers are up on the screen, and Homer goes, "Here comes 2." That is another moment that I use in everyday life. Anytime there's a countdown somewhere, anywhere at all, whenever 3 comes up, I go, "Here comes 2," and people just look at me like I'm crazy.
That's awesome. Another thing they talked about in the commentary was, I don't remember who it was, but somebody basically kind of like what we talked about on our finale show, things that like we always end up saying from this show. They mentioned that one of the ones from this episode specifically is when Homer's like, "Appreciate it." They say that all the time, and they think about this one. Like, he's so angry, and then he just goes to so calm at the end. The only other thing I have to add to that for this episode is that there is a very distinct shot of a family that seems just a little out of place in a tram car towards the end of the episode. And that is actually the family. It's both Mel Gibson's assistant and his family, who are also just big fans of the show. So the animators took the effort and time. Mel Gibson didn't demand it or anything. They just really liked them a lot and decided to draw them into the show, which was really cool. And on that same note, the executives in this episode, some of them are named after Mel Gibson's children.
Oh, okay. I was wondering why they were so specific with names.
Yeah. I also was going to talk about that French Canadian version voice actor, just because I thought that was a really fun thing that they did, how he ended up doing both voices. I thought that was really, really cool. But since you already talked about it, that will do it for this week's Best Darn Diddly, our very first one officially here on Get Vocal with the new format. We've got to get you a light because you can barely see your face. We'll work on these kinks as we work.
If I do this, and they just can't see me at all.
That doesn't help at all. In fact, stop that. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for all of you that support us on Patreon. Thank you for downloading, sharing, following, all of that cool stuff that just makes doing this a lot of fun and an absolute joy. Richie, where can they follow us online?
Follow us on Twitter. He's at Mr. Most Days Off, pretty much on every social media platform possible. I'm at the Wiz_Kid23 on pretty much no social platform possible. But most importantly, you can follow our show. That's at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY.
And we will be back again, live and in color, right here, and on all of our normal places too, as we usually do. But join Richie and I again next week, and we will be reviewing the episode Brother's Little Helper.
Just remember, before you take that poop, check your toilet for bombs.
I always do. And until next time, be cromulent to each other.